Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 15th episode of the FCCI Cacao Academy Conversation Series. Today is September 30th, 2020, and my name is Lauren Heineck of Well Tempered Media. Week over week, I have been joined by the two co-creators of the FCCI Cacao Academy project, Dr. Carla Martin, Harvard lecturer and executive director of the Fine Cacao and Chocolate Institute, and Alyssa Jade McDonald-Baertl of Cacao Academy. It has been my absolute pleasure to have been invited to be moderator in this series, and they have proven to be both mentors, deep thinkers, and very generous souls. So I'm grateful to have spent this time with them. Our series is coming to a close in this phase one, but we are so grateful also for you all for joining us to have been a part of this. And we know that you will be able to capture gems and little bits of wisdom as you watch the recorded sessions that are available on YouTube on the FCCI channel that have subtitles in Spanish. Today we are joining for this session between us again, and we are going to have a little roundup of what exactly has been going on behind the scenes, what this project is all about, and a quick check-in with the founders before there is a mild break and phase two begins. So thank you for being here, and we are looking forward to all of this as it develops. I'll turn it over to Liz and Carla to hear a little bit about where things have evolved since last week, if there are those updates, and if not, just to recapitulate, that's not the word I'm looking for, to summarize why this has been going on.
Thank you so much, Lauren. This has been an absolute pleasure, and it would be an understatement to say it's really the highlight of my week. I look forward to these conversations every week with you, with our special guests, and just as a way to check in, to connect with other people, and to provide the transparency that was really important to Liz and I as we were designing this project. In the past week, we have had some fun updates. I'll get to those in just a moment. But I wanted to first begin by addressing why we've been live streaming for the past 3 months. So Cacao Academy is a project that we've been building out that is a collaborative digital cacao farmer peer training project. And it means quite literally that we are working in a very collaborative fashion with all different kinds of stakeholders to provide multimedia learning materials that are custom designed for cacao farmers and that are really shaped around their own desire and need to peer train, to train one another. So as we've been doing all of that, we knew that we needed to talk with lots of experts. We knew that there were plenty of people who had imagined things like this before, who were already doing great things in peer training, who were already, cacao farmer mentors to others. And we were looking for a way that we could structure our conversations with them and gather their knowledge. We also wanted the opportunity to talk to people who might not like the idea, who might have critiques to share. So we wanted to hear from basically friends and maybe not so friends, people who would have ideas that could help us to make what we're doing better. It was also important to us that we do this transparently, and that's because so much has been done in relation to cacao farmer training that is done without an evidence base, without a way that others can critique it, without any kind of publication or sharing of impact that allows for anyone to see, did the training work? And it was really important to us to have the possibility to disrupt that in some way. And of course, disrupt is this buzzword that inspires all different kinds of emotions in people. But we actually felt that that was part of being responsible innovators, and that it would allow for different audiences to engage with these materials and to think amongst themselves about how what we're doing might impact their own work. So that was another key goal and why we decided to have these live streams. And then finally, because we are in this moment of COVID-19, where there is a pandemic, where communication is so halted, but also somehow magnified by this constant kind of chaining ourselves to computers or to WhatsApp or whatever, We knew that this would be an important way that we could communicate externally about something that has an enormous amount of internal communication going on. Just to, I don't have the stats, it would be fun to do that at some time, but if we think about the number of hours, people hours put into work on this project, it is, hundreds over the past 3 months on the part of dozens of people at this point. It is thousands of emails. It is a countless number of WhatsApp messages, voice messages. There are, WhatsApp groups that are still active and people are chiming in. It is responding to people via social media. It is updating email newsletters. It is putting things on blogs. All of this is going out all over the place. And we wanted one place that would be a space where we could hold external communication, given all of that additional noise that's out there. And I'll turn it over to Liz, who I know will also have her thoughts to add here.
Oh, you explained it perfectly. I have nothing to add. And I think that's the wonderful part about this collaboration is often Carla and I find ourselves as yin yang. Sometimes we've even found ourselves completing each other's sentences or filling in gaps for each other. But I think that perfectly wraps up a seamless and very agile project development of responding to a very urgent need from farmers, where both our organizations and many organizations around the world were contacted saying, oh, help, we're left without any training right now. We need some support to move forward in our work and what can be done. And you've perfectly explained why we're live streaming and what this project is about. Yes, and I have here in my notes that we've been following the sun from one continent to the other. It's been quite interesting just in this moment here to recognize the sun is coming directly onto my face at this point, because through these 3 months, of course, the hours are also changing and our daylight is changing. So it has been so interesting to follow along the project from this perspective and to witness your deep investigation and reliance on other experts, and we're certainly going to be touching on some of those themes today of how their work also impacted the development and what will be happening moving forward. From here, I think we could walk over a discussion about some of the more technical aspects, what that might look like in preparing something that is digital and collaborative. So any thoughts in that area? Yes, for us, the collaborative aspect of the FCCI Cacao Academy was most important. And what I love is it feels like we lived that in a meta way. So for us, the collaborative aspect really draws firstly from the idea of being cross-discipline. My personal research within my academic world is on the effectiveness of cacao farmer training. And to date, we have found that cacao farmer training of the last 30 years has been ineffective for a variety of reasons. Some in terms of it not being mapped to farmers' needs, other times for it to be addressing learning on an issue that doesn't necessarily exist, and other times for a variety of external aspects. So for example, collaborative for us means let's pick up all those big picture areas. And Lauren, we had people here who were bringing up topics about farmer nutrition. We were talking about livelihood. We were understanding crop layout. We were understanding diversification in income. We had a huge range of influence into the design of our thinking. And for us, collaborative is that first part of why is traditional farmer training not as effective as it could be? And what are the missing pieces? So for us, the first aspect of being collaborative was looking absolutely cross nature. And I think these conversations that we had here on Facebook and YouTube very much demonstrate that. Sometimes we saw people saying, gee, there's academics in here, and sometimes they're technical extension agents that are working on farms. Sometimes there were professors, sometimes there were business people who were bringing in other methodologies. And I think this is the most fun part, to have actually drawn from the wish list of the world. Do you ever start sometimes a project and you say, okay, we'd like to respond to a request we have, and we would like to tap the best brains that we know in the world across every topic, from historical anthropologists that could give very detailed notes. I think Catherine Sampak is one of
the highlights of my influences in terms of bringing back the role of people working in cacao farms and health and the integrated nature of agroforestry, which you see on very modern regulatory frameworks and farming planning systems. But for example, her influence advised us how these are long considered issues. Carla, within the collaborative aspect, what was standing out for you?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. For me, it was a sense that we could generate a type of self knowledge exchange through these conversations. One of the things that has always been important to us at FCCI, that the field of anthropology in which most of my training is in, has really emphasized is that looking at different situations holistically is essential. And the people who are most likely to understand a situation holistically are those who are in it. But that doesn't mean that they need to be bounded by country borders or more. And that's been one of the most exciting collaborative parts of this so far so just in terms of how the project is designed, we have 3 initial partners, one in Nicaragua, one in Colombia, one in the Dominican Republic. That very naturally brings a collaboration among 3 really different cacao growing regions with very different situations, but with expertise that is super valuable to share, and with excitement. People are enthusiastic about sharing among these different countries. We also, of course, spoke with people from Haiti, from Costa Rica, from the Philippines, from Indonesia, based doing work in West Africa. I mean, we were jumping around all over the place to many different countries to gather expertise and additional support and knowledge sharing that can strengthen this project. And that's what I see as truly essential for most cacao-focused work going forward. If you look at the chocolate industry today, you can really think of it as the cacao industry and the chocolate industry. The two link together, but the chocolate industry has been sharing deeply for centuries, where people are jumping between countries, they're visiting one another's factories, whether or not they do it openly or sneakily, right? They're doing all these kinds of things where knowledge sharing is happening. In cacao farmer peer training, that is exactly what we want to catalyze. That kind of knowledge exchange among people who have a holistic understanding of a situation and who have developed complementary skill sets that can provide others with the needed skills that they have desired to access in order to succeed in their own practice of cacao farming. And so I would say for me, that's been one of the most exciting parts of this, is bringing voices together from the real experts that know how to do this and implementing that expertise among others.
Yes, and you both have brought new terminology into my own vocabulary. The term multidisciplinary really stands out as being such now an integral part of the way I view cacao and chocolate, and how to think about that and how that might impact even my own space in the industry. So I'm grateful to have your own perspectives and those of the experts that have joined us. You just mentioned now this area of how the voice of the farmers have been so integral to the way that the project is developed, because it is developed for them. But you're not only creating content, you're involving them in the process. I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge here, and what their participation has looked like.
We're both jumping to go. So I'll start us off, and then Liz, please jump in. So this is really key from Liz's research and from other research that, of course, has informed our work. So we started with this plan from, I would say, actually an academic mindset, which is that most research shows that cacao farmer training has been ineffective because it is not actually mapped onto what cacao farmers have expressed that they need or that they can do. And there's just endless amounts of evidence of this going back decades, as Liz described. So what we wanted to do from the very beginning was be sure that we understood what cacao farmers wanted, what they needed, what they could do, what they were willing to do. You know, all of these things were essential. And so we did this in a variety of different ways. In the case of Nicaragua, we conducted a survey with cacao farmers where the different technical experts in the Nicaraguan context went into the field and took a survey of a subset of the 600 farming households that we aim to serve. We ended up with 167 surveys where in these surveys, we asked them things like, you know, what do you want to learn? What do you feel that you already have mastered, but you know, what are other things that you think you need to master? We asked them things as simple as, you know, what kinds of technology or multimedia are you engaging with already? How do you engage with them? What types of devices do you have? Do you have a budget where if you needed certain equipment or other inputs to work on your farm, you could do that? And we even asked things like, you know, can you share with us your literacy comfort level or your comfort level in working with mathematical equations? Can you tell us about your schooling background so that we can get a sense of, you know, what kinds of activities or exercises might you have already done in the past that would feel familiar, what others would feel totally, you know, off base and irrelevant to you? And then we even asked questions like, you know, do you deal with health issues that might impact your ability to learn or to implement changes on your farm? And we learned things about their vision limitations or other health concerns. We learned things about time limitations. You know, when do they actually have time in their schedules when they could sit down and focus on a learning task? So all of that came together to deeply inform what we would then deliver in terms of training materials. We also complemented this with expert interviews. So we spoke with many different people in the Nicaraguan context who have been engaged in farmer training. And I'll let Liz talk about how we approached this through a rapid evidence assessment as well that informed how we were able to build this out.
Absolutely. You know, my favorite stories of these interviews that Carla just mentioned is stories of, we had asked in Nicaragua, who are exceptional farmers in the region? Who stands out as being innovative and also successful in their farming practices and also influential within their groups? And there were, for example, two particular ladies that were identified to us as being just brilliant. And if we even just explained how much time was taken, our wonderful colleague Jose was constantly on the phone with them. It took about 3 weeks to speak with two particular really lead farmers, just to double check that the content and the curriculum that we had made, you know, does it make sense? Do they have a better idea? Did they have a local tool that was more relevant or useful than the one we suggested? Are there other words that can describe this? Are there other helpful hints and tips that they could give? So just to put it in summary, if we say, for example, that in the end we ended up producing some images and some videos and some audio conversations for farmers to translate some learning they were interested in, just attuning that to the exact nuances of our particular region of farmers took 3 weeks of daily conversations to just get that buy-in, that understanding, because you know what it's like yourself. Sometimes you're asked, hey, what's your feedback, or what could you imagine this to be? Sometimes we have the answer immediately, but then we think about it, we go into the field, we reflect on our daily practices, and we come up with more ideas. And this is, I would say, the underestimated gem, and what I'm very proud of in the first iteration that we have made with the FCCI Cacao Academy is that it was to that depth that every piece of the learning materials was absolutely like a warm jacket to fit how a farmer thinks and talks, would understand or be interested in these topics. And this is, as Carla says, exactly what the evidence identifies is missing. And this isn't just simple surveys. What are you interested in? Simple yes and no's, or scale 1 to 5. What do you preference? This is customization at the level of I would say, what the big tech companies do with any product development. This is what we took exactly to farmers, because exactly their insights were the ones that even made our learning and our curriculum better. They came up with a few more nuances. They came up with a few more workarounds. And this is exactly that tapping of the inherent knowledge and pulling it out and the customizing. And I would love us to be so proud of just these efforts. And you can imagine, from a planning perspective, that was a big surprise for us. We didn't think it would really take that long. Carla is used to doing years of face-to-face trainings with farmers and cooperatives, and myself as well. We're used to being able to arrive in a location and do some preparation and run some trainings through that sometimes take days. This took weeks. And I think that's also a nuance about the COVID situation on one side, but also the digital situation on the other, because the trainings that we are producing, these things are like carved in stone, although they're digital, but they mean they will have the scalability, and the lifetime of these materials is infinitely longer than any face-to-face training we have done in the past. So the need for it to be a perfect match to farmer intelligence was high. So every time it is deployed, it delivers a genuine value. And this is why I think that is the piece de résistance in our approach. It was the biggest thing lacking, in our opinion, regarding farmer training, and it is the thing that we spent the most amount of time on. As Carla said, we did evidence assessments, we did value chain analysis, we did historical analysis. These are things that we do. This is our skill, our expertise, our job. We brought in a team of 10 to help us do this. This is our daily bread as such. But that extra, making sure that farmer voice wasn't just a survey or just an interview, but their fingerprint is indelibly printed on what we produced. That is something I'm very proud of. And that took 3 months.
Yes, and as we had from episode 9 with Dr. Nina Huntman, or episode that is 13 with the DSI lab, there were various voices that also came in to help us reflect on what it might look like to design digitally. And you've just mentioned those things and how that has impacted you. I've been really struck by the efficiency in all of this going through a pandemic, that yet knowing that there's so much noise in the world at this point, you have stayed very laser focused in helping those that you want to help. And those, you know, at the heart of this are the farmers. So grateful for your work here and for those words. We have just kind of summarized a little bit of what's happened in phase 1. And I'm curious if there's anything you can tell us about phase 2, where the curriculum goes from here.
Oh, thanks, Lauren. So it might be helpful. Let me quickly outline what we've produced in phase 1. So we have produced a suite of multimedia training materials that are now available for both trainers or mentor farmers or technical experts or quality managers at cooperatives, and for farming households themselves to work with. These materials come in a variety of different multimedia formats. There are images, there are videos, and there are audio files. And these have all been mapped on to exactly what we saw in the information and what we were in conversation with farming households about as we prepared them. So what the materials themselves cover is very niche, it's super geeky. In the Nicaraguan context, there has been a push for people to focus on cacao quality, and that's quality writ large. So quality in this sense means quality for food safety purposes, as well as quality for flavor or, sort of reaching the fine flavor market purposes. So what we did is we worked with our colleagues at the working group, of which we're part as well, the International Standards for Cocoa Quality and Flavor, International Standards for the Assessment of Cocoa Quality and Flavor. That's ISCQF for short. And we have recently released drafts of standard protocols for how to assess cocoa quality and flavor. So what we did is when we surveyed farmers, we asked them, which of these protocols is a priority for you? Which do you feel like you would really like to learn? And they told us 3 of those protocols. They said, we want to, for top choice, we want to learn how to do sensory analysis on our cocoa beans. So we want to work with the cocoa on our farms. We want to taste it and analyze it and be able to identify if it has defects or if it has potential positive attributes that would contribute to its being recognized as fine flavor. Then they said the other thing that we really want to learn is how to do external analysis and the cut test on those beans. And they went so far as to report back to us, you know, we've heard about the cut test for years and years. We've seen pictures of it. It just doesn't make sense to us totally. There are always some things we have questions on, so we want to master that. And then finally, they wanted to learn about other cleaning laws or how to evaluate things like cocoa bean count, because they had received feedback from buyers, things like, you know, the size of these beans is off, or, you know, other types of information, but they didn't quite know what they needed to be doing on the farm or what they needed to be doing at a quality control center to manage all of that. So we developed 3 videos, 3 audio files, and 3 sets of images. It adds up to, I think, 36 images total that are designed to train on exactly these 3 protocols: measuring cleaning loss and cocoa bean count, external analysis and the cut test, and sensory analysis on unroasted cocoa beans. And we spent a period of time producing these materials and then determining how we would appropriately release them. So we did a series of Zoom seminars where the different technical experts, quality managers, mentor farmers joined us. 75 people total joined us. And we introduced them to the materials. They actively completed these protocols themselves and could interact with us and ask questions that arose for them. And then we provided them with all of the materials and we said, go ahead and think about how you would now like to teach other people to use these. And they have, since receiving those trainings, been holding their own Zoom trainings. And what's been really interesting is they've adapted these creatively. So some people said, you know, we liked your Zoom training a lot. So we're literally going to play the recording of your Zoom training with a group of farmers. We're going to pause it in important moments. We'll answer their questions and so on and so forth. Others said, you know, we think for the groups of farmers that we work with, they're going to want to be way more interactive. So we're going to take the images, we're going to take the videos and the audios, we're going to make them into our own presentation, and we'll roll it out, you know, one protocol in one training, a second protocol in the next training, and so on. And we actually sat in on a Zoom training that they were doing yesterday where they were doing exactly that. And that's one way that these materials are now making their way out to these farming households. The second way that they're making them out is still part of this phase 1 pilot, which is for those farming households, it's about 50% that have access to a smartphone. They will receive via WhatsApp a download link, and our partners in Nicaragua are paying for their data so that they can download the 3 videos, the 3 audio files, and the large set of images. We will then coach them via WhatsApp with reminder messages in a WhatsApp group and more, how they should engage with those materials. We will be available to answer questions that they might have about the materials. And then of course, the mentor farmers, the quality managers, the technical experts are also part of those WhatsApp groups, and we'll be able to see as things are going, is everyone understanding? What might be confusing? Where might we need to do more in-person training when that's more possible? And so on. So that's all part of phase 1. Phase 2 would mean that we take this even further. So I mentioned only 50% of these cocoa farming households have a smartphone. that means that we're missing 50% of people, which to us doesn't feel good. It's, you know, there's often a lot of excitement around digital technology, like, woohoo, we made this available via smartphones. But actually, I feel bummed. I feel like, great, okay, so 50% of people got it via their smartphone, but actually what that means is 50% of people did not get the training. And those are the people who may very well most need the training. And so we know that from the other rapid evidence assessment work that we did. So phase 2 involves employing different types of technology that are accessible to people with candy bar phones, which these other households do have. And so we'll be working on that over the coming months. It also involves taking some of this multimedia and making it analog, printing it out. So if people can't keep images on a smartphone, that's fine. You just need to print something and make it available to them in person where they can handle it and work with it themselves. So all of that is to be continued. As we go forward in phase 2 as well, we'll be expanding this training into other countries. And I wonder, Liz, I've been talking for a while now, if you'd like to talk about that part of what we'll be doing.
Absolutely. I feel like we're reading each other's minds. Just to bring the point, as Carla mentioned, the 50% of farmers in this case, for example, that don't have access to smartphones. Sometimes I think in our fast-paced world, we can underestimate truly the difficulty of reaching that other 50%. It's not as simple as TreeFi and mobile networks that can be driven around in cars, or all sorts of interesting solutions that sometimes we might see reading the newspaper or hitting winning awards, for example, in innovation awards. As the work of developing the curriculum is going along, we've been following actually all of this technology and the affordability, the accessibility, and the reliability of all of these wonderful solutions. Sometimes we find ourselves following the thread and coming to quite some dead ends. So all this to say that the development of technology to reach people who are unconnected is still extremely patchy, is still absolutely collaborations between large phone network providers, large ICT, multinational organizations, small NGOs who have projects that go out and implement and test different technology. So what we've been doing is literally working between the world of NGO, startup, and innovation, and multinational technology to identify a sweet spot where we can, for example, leverage different pieces of technology, as Carla says, to reach this 50% of farmers who are not yet able. Within this context, we notice these unconnected groups of farmers have a lot in common with different regions, as Carla said. We're in discussion, for example, in Haiti, there's been very significant and wonderful farmer training there regarding diversification of crop and diversification of financial model. You would have heard on our last live stream with Patrick in Haiti. There are opportunities, for example, in Mindanao, in southern Philippines, there's peer learning networks that have been developed in regions where it's physical peers working together to go out and evangelize the idea of learning from each other. So sometimes in other countries that are interested in exactly this sort of training, there's either an interest in the diversification of curriculum, or there's an interest in peer learning networks. And this is where we can start to map what we have, and in phase 2, roll it out into these different locations under different purposes, while also testing consistently how is this unconnected type of technology being able to help bring those bridges together. And as Carla says, there will always be an element of analog and digital working together. And key to this is complementing existing services that occur in the market. There are some very famous and wonderful programs that exist for farmer communication already. Sometimes these are proprietary systems owned by multinationals in cacao or chocolate trading. Sometimes these are, for example, governmental funded apps that offer training and communication. We heard about Cacao Mobile recently, also on our live stream here. These are existing investments that we think very highly of, and we like to work with and complement. So rather than creating more movement in the market, looking to make sure that the curriculum goes into existing investments, we don't create new wheels. And for the people who are unconnected, making sure the most responsible solutions are making sure that they're not left out of the boat. As Carla mentioned before, people who are sometimes unconnected systemically don't have access to many things. In our research, we have found they don't often get access to healthcare, to education, to services and civil liberties, to opportunities and understandings to access credit or finance. So with this approach about reaching the farmer training to the people who are unconnected, who have asked for it, we want to make sure that we bring this other load of services as much as possible in the boat at the same time.
Yes, reaching the underserved, and also by way of doing what you've done through this very public approach, you've reached people who are just quite interested in the industry and quite interested in where the state of chocolate is at the moment, and particularly within the fine cacao space. I know that we had mentioned in a couple of other episodes that people can view some of those photos from the curriculum development on the FCCI Facebook and Instagram. They are still there and they are still beautiful. I just show up for Wednesdays to do these series, so I'm not in all of the behind the scenes efforts. As we've mentioned, this is a team of people and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of them working together to create what you will see here, but also what you'll see in the future. I'm really grateful to you both to hear both of what has been going on and what you can expect from phase 2. Anything else before we move into the peer learning space that you would like to touch on or we might have missed? Okay, so peer learning has also been an area that was a large focus in these series, and which is a core element of the project itself. And I think it would be interesting to touch on some of those milestones, what has been imperative to you both, or what you've learned from the experience.
Yes, peer learning for us was meta as well as a lived experience. As you saw with these live streams, Carla and I were reaching out to people that we know to ask for their advice and input. So we try to be the change we wish to see, literally learning from our peers, as well as encouraging peer learning within farmers as well. I think the thing that became most standout or significant for me was the vital importance of technical assistance within agricultural extension. Technical assistants are the people who sometimes come from farming backgrounds themselves and maybe work with an NGO or work with a governmental organization or a company, and they're like the meat in the sandwich between farmers and programs that come in. And I would say, from if we were to hold up the hero of much of the work we do, very much of that sits within technicos or technical assistants, colleagues who are the sum of peer learning themselves. Often their job has been defined by being like a bee between flowers and informally connecting knowledge between regions, and for example, identifying a phytosanitation method in one farm and recommending to somebody 3 plantations away to say, you should go back and visit them, like really capturing this informal network of peer diffusion and peer learning, and identifying where is the most interesting and knowledgeable person in this whole network of many people, from farmer to government or from consumer to chocolate company. And I would say for me, the hero of peer learning in the work that we do are these technical assistance teams, because it's like when you speak to them, they bring across with emotion and color, with very detailed stories and examples of what the challenges at the farming end are. And they're this wonderful method to transmit information back and forth. And so I would say for me, hero of peer learnings are the technicos who are out in the field and are the ones that truly feel the pain points and are able to translate these messages in a meaningful way that can stimulate action in support.
I would love to hear, just out of curiosity as well, I would imagine that there are people listening that would look at this and say, this is incredible. There are 2 people from different fields, from different backgrounds that have come together on something that they deeply care about. And within this peer learning exchange is also the work that both of you have done, Alyssa and Carla, in the synergy that you've built between each other. Some thoughts on how your relationship came to be, or maybe to inspire others to do something similar with their friend around on the other side of the world.
Oh, I love this question, Lauren, because as Liz was talking about heroes of peer learning, I was like, I think Liz is my hero of peer learning. So no, one thing that comes to mind is, so Liz and I have known each other for years and have kind of been following one another's work, I would say, as like a mutual admiration society, as I feel about many people working in cacao and chocolate, and been looking for the right moment when we could find something that fit both our interests and actually matched onto our expertise that we could work on together. And I come from an academic background with a real goal of applying anthropology, applying knowledge about cacao for practical purposes in the industry. We've heard from many people in our conversation series who are interested in doing that same kind of thing. I think here of Dr. Amanda Berlin or Michael Otiche, who are saying, we have all these answers from the academic world, but how do we get people outside of academia to start applying them or hearing them or, engaging with them? That's always been a major, major communication priority of mine. But what Liz has is this mirror expertise where she has been engaged in social enterprise. She has been engaged in conversations about how to build businesses, about how to apply this kind of knowledge actively. And so what I was so thrilled about in this possibility to work together is that I could come with this idea and that she also understands as an academic and say, so we know this theoretically, but practically, how do we start to make it happen? And she was like, oh, well, you do this and you build the business this way. And I was like, I'm glad it's so simple for you, because for me, that would have taken, years of trying to figure it out, learning how to even talk with people outside of academia. There are all different ways of engaging and, styles. So I learn every day through this partnership how to better apply that academic knowledge. And I would say we also share a mission, which is to support other people's peer learning. So, we wanted to work with you, Lauren, because you have already developed this expertise in how to communicate with an audience about things in a spoken fashion. You've done this via your podcast, via your Nibs of Wisdom series, and of course in many other ways over the years. And then we had a group of our incredible volunteers who come with their own individual types of expertise, some very tech focused, others very curriculum focused, who we, because they were excited about that, because we were excited about that, we were able to build a system where they all shared and exchanged. And it really comes from a belief that none of us can do this on our own. No one can know everything. We all have blind spots. We all have our own kind of emotional tics or, things that might set us off or bother us, that having someone who compliments you allows you to maybe heal through those things, to not stand in the way of progress in a project, and that also allow you to do your work better. We really do believe that people are stronger when working together, that requires both professional and emotional maturity to do it well, and that we can do that and can model that for an industry that would benefit from more of it. And that honestly, if our goal is to do something to the benefit of cacao farmers, it requires that of us. We cannot be looking for salvation through helping cacao farmers. What we need to be doing is working with people as peers. Cacao farmers are colleagues in this space, respecting them just as much as we respect ourselves, and developing systems of training that are built on that premise, instead of this idea that, comes from historical stubborn attitudes, stereotypical or prejudiced beliefs about what cacao farmers can or should do, or even from a type of martyrdom that is equally unproductive in this space. So, peer learning is fundamentally about trying to equalize, trying to knowledge share, and trying to do it in such a way that we all benefit.
Oh, absolutely. By the way, absolute mutual respect and gratitude. In the same way, the way we are fundamentally follow the sun is not just half of our volunteers live in Europe and the other half in North and South America, but also literally Carla and I, we pass work off. You know what I love about the work that we do, and neither of us or anybody of the team own anything. Everything is a highly fluid concept. We have people crossing teams, working on each other's work. Everything is sitting, for example, on open documentation. Everything is visible for the whole team to understand everything within our management team, all of the finances, all of the planning, everything is sitting in a very open way where we can all see, adjust, and step in and look at what's going on. And I find that fundamental. Part of what Carla said with the peer learning, I would say resilience and commitment comes in there as well. There's been many times where things that we have planned have not happened, and you just, in German, you say durchbeißen, you bite through, and we see things through. And what I love is Carla's organization and my organization, every time we come up sometimes with a small roadblock, we both say, we'll put the money down. Like, we put the money down and we put the team in and we get things through. And I think this is the interesting thing, as you mentioned before, between the wishing for a better world or hoping for it to happen one day, or putting your money, your time, and your people in to say, no matter what, we will see this through. And so we are an academic organization. The Fine Cacao and Chocolate Institute is an NGO, yet we have this social enterprise idea of our work means value. We put our time, money, and commitment behind it no matter what. We see it as we run that commitment and resilience as a business, and we hold ourselves to the NGO transparency, quality, and goals that we go for. And I think this is what makes the interesting point. So when there are the blockades that happen, we just find alternative measures to get them through. And we're very lucky to have organizations beside us who are willing to pitch in to help do heavy lifting. We've had phenomenal colleagues from tech through to social development literally turn up with tools in their hands and saying, how can we help you develop an IVR system, or how can we help you develop heat maps of behavioral usage of technology mapping to your curriculum? It's humbling and it's wonderful, but it only happens because we are willing to step first. We step in the cold water. We put the time, money, and people down to make this happen. And I think this is sometimes what happens in developmental work, is sometimes the nice to have. I certainly see it a lot in social enterprise, lots of big eyes, and especially during the COVID time, let's run in and do something, let's raise money for something. But there has to be the goal of what is the value this is going to bring, which brings back to the point of Carla and the whole point of monitoring, demonstrating impact, and having that transparency means this is a long game. We may or may not be in this format in the future. As we grow and develop, we are looking for and are inviting partners to complement, contribute, and help grow this position forward. But we will always keep taking that first step. And I think that's what the peer engagement is, as it builds resilience and commitment.
Thank you. I would also think that there are people listening that hear you say that and wonder how they could be a part. What might it look like to become a partner or to access the pilot? And I'm hoping that you would share some of that too.
Yeah, it's as simple as reaching out. At this point, we have the bandwidth. We are that enthusiastic that basically we're available and ready to collaborate. And so it's as simple as sending an email, giving us a call, setting up a meeting to talk about what collaboration might look like. We are going to take a brief pause and just take a couple of weeks to rest. These trainings are continuing in the meantime, but we think it's equally important that our team be, healthy and cared for in order to continue this marathon of developing materials and building things out. So over the next few weeks, you won't be hearing from us in these conversation series, but we are still, supervising work behind the scenes and still available to schedule, starting from mid-October, meetings to move these things forward together. We have also reached out to selected organizations to build out a team of volunteers for phase 2. And I'm very excited. Many of our phase 1 volunteers are staying on. We've become very close with them. We've invested a lot of time and energy in building relationships, in training them. They now have considerable expertise that they developed in the project. And so they're staying on as masters or mentors who will support with training the new group of volunteers. And we're even thinking about things like how we can develop a volunteer core in the longer term that will feed into a project like this, because we know there are many people that would like to spend their time focusing on this type of project. So all of that is in the to be continued, beginning in mid-October phase, and we'll go from there. Once we are back in mid-October, we'll be working with our partners in Colombia, Serie Cacao, to implement training in their largest cacao growing region. So you'll be hearing updates from us on all of that, as well as with partners in the Dominican Republic, Haiti, even the Philippines, to explore ways that we can take the hard work that's already been done and have a quick win for farming communities there that would like to access these types of materials.
Okay, that's wonderful. So that email is contact@chocolateinstitute.org. And of course, we have been very grateful to all of you who have been tuning into these series and getting to know us better, getting to know the experts that have been a part of it. And if you have some more to add, if you have notes of what you've learned, we would love to hear what you have accessed from this series, how it's been beneficial to your own personal development and growth or your organization's growth, and how we might be a part of your journey moving forward as well. So I think if there's not any more what's next steps, then we can probably close for today.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. So one next step to keep in mind from us at FCCI is, so we're pausing our conversation series on Cacao Academy, and you'll hear from us in October about what's coming next. But in the meantime, our colleague at FCCI, Jose Lopez-Ganem, has been engaged in a very cool project that involves 65 organizations in Mexico. He, of course, is our Latin American Cultural Exchange Fellow focused on research on Mexican cacao and chocolate. And he will, has, with this group of now over 100 people in the Mexican context, worked to develop a conversation series. This will be a different one. It won't be live streamed. It'll be podcast style, because that's more appropriate for this particular group, but it's with many leading voices in cacao and chocolate talking about the question of Mexican cacao and chocolate and thinking about how this group from Mexico can determine together what their own collaboration and peer learning might look like moving forward. So through the month of October, even into a bit of November, stay tuned to that. This is an incredible group effort that has involved a lot of conflict resolution, a lot of working together to solve problems. It is historic. There has never been a group like this from the specialty cacao and chocolate sector in Mexico that has come together with such a commitment to support one another. And Jose has been really fortunate as a researcher to observe that process and then to be, basically given the opportunity by his colleagues from Mexico to provide this podcast series and an educational and research focused sense for all of them. So for those of you who are interested in all of that, you'll see who the speakers are soon, and we hope that you'll tune in.
And Liz, we have you back. Are there any final words that you would like to share about overall in general, your participation or what you see on the horizon?
A big thank you to the kindness of the community that has supported us through these steps. There is I'm very, very grateful. Our own organizations have had to grow internally to manage this project. And we're very, very lucky to work with the people that we do, who give their time in all sorts of ways and measures that sometimes we can only pay for in bottles of wine or in exchanging work. You know, we should also mention sometimes the help that we have been receiving, we advise back. There's peer learning in terms of counter advising between organizations even. So I would say what I've experienced is a phenomenal kindness of the smartest people I know in the world, and just a huge gratitude for that, and to please keep it going, and that we are here for this too. As much help as we receive, we also very much like to give. So please be in touch if there's something that we can contribute in that way as well.
And I think we should give a quick round of applause for Lauren, who has very graciously hosted us through this entire process. And we will be back with more soon. But in the meantime, please accept our gratitude and our genuine excitement about what comes next and what has already come. Thank you.